Now, out of these two movements here, what one would you think would produce better golf shots, better downswing rotation? Now, if you said this one, for my student would be completely wrong. So this is where what we're seeing here with almost this thrown out kind of casted looking downswing managed to completely transform my student's rotation and ball striking ability going through the shot to where it seems almost completely backwards. As we're told always, you cannot be casting, you cannot be throwing the club, you've got to be lagging it. But that's where the golf swing is so different for absolutely everyone. And this absolutely for my student rotated him so well through the golf ball. It was night and day with just that one change. Now, why this real backwards move helped my student so much with this kind of casting throwing move is because he was trying to create too much lag without knowing what actually helps create lag. So he was doing this, so we can see, just measuring it here on this hack motion, he was getting too much of this kind of created and forced what we call upward hinge in that downswing, which is radial deviation of the wrist. So if we look here, we can see that left wrist is at 29 in its radial deviation, so really quite cranked. And we can see as well, it's quite extended at the same time. Now, for a lot of players, when they try to really lag that club, really pull it down, that to obviously get that angle, not only do they create all this hinge, which gets you narrow, which we'll talk about why that's not good, but it also creates a lot of cupping in that left wrist. Whenever we really hinge up, we create more cup. So what does that do? Opens the face. We know if we really create a ton of artificial hinge in that downswing, that face is just going to get more and more and more open. So what's going to happen as we come through it, we're going to have to try and flip to square it up. We're going to get this awful looking flippy handsy release just to save the golf ball like my student did. So not only does it hurt you in what happens to your club face, makes it more open the more it extends and cups, it would also really hurt you in your narrow nature of the club shaft and the downswing. So when we try to really create that lag physically by really bringing those wrists, really kind of cranking it in, that will get the club way too close to you. Now, when we get the club closer to us in any part of the swing, we ultimately elevate the swing arc more up off the ground, more out of the earth. So for example here, if I get in this real crank, so we can see again here, where am I? Again, look how extended that is, 51, so that's really, really cupped. And then 39 again on that radial deviation, 40 now. It's okay, really cranked. Now look what happens when I try to move in good posture in the downswing. I try and keep it going all the way down that angle. How far off the ground that club is an absolute joke. So I'm never going to be able to even remotely make contact with it. Some players, if they somehow get away, they might top it. But what they will naturally start to do is then throw the angle coming into the shot. They're actually trying to maintain angle early and trying to create it, and then they'll throw it. But what they have to do to be able to, in order to get that to work, is stand up. So if I'm going to want to square off that club face from more hinge, and that downswing artificially created hinge radial deviation is going to cut the wrist, open the face. So I need to stall out that rotation as well to be able to square it. Does any of that sound like it's going to help you with golf? No, it doesn't. It means you're going to hit the ball shorter and you're going to hit the ball all over the place. So that's where we needed to feel something very extreme. I knew with my student, just trying to get him to do the ideal is not going to work. But this is so many of you out there, which is why I thought I have to tell this to my fans out here on YouTube, my viewers, because this is going to help a lot of you. We don't want to naturally try to create lag. What we needed to do with our student to get him to stop doing this movement, we needed him to feel the opposite. So we needed him to feel what we call ulnar deviation, which is just hinging down, thumbs down. So it's an easy way to do it. Thumbs down, ulnar deviation, thumbs up, radial deviation. So thumbs down, that's our feel, as we can see there. Just that thumbs down, we can see some very interesting things. Okay, I'm 43 on ulnar deviation, so I'm really exaggerating, of course, but I'm flexed with the left wrist now. Such an important bit of information to know. When we hinge more down, we go into more bowing of the left wrist. What does that do? That squares off the face Absolutely. So we know if we were feeling a little bit of that, we're flattening out the wrist angle, we're fixing that club face. But of course, if we're feeling this, even though it's extreme, we're going to be again making sure the club isn't too close to us. So we're feeling this, but this is a feel versus real. We're feeling like that club's been pushed out in that ulnar deviation, but in reality, we're just keeping it nice there. So you can see here, ideally, I'm still in this hinged up movement in the downswing. We're going to be. We don't want to extreme it. Don't want to really pull it in there. So there we go. It's just going to flatten out. I'm feeling radial deviation and it's feeling ulnar deviation, hinging it down. And it's going to be, for that golfer, really helping with, one, squaring the club face, from that left wrist being flatter, more in that bowed fashion. That's going to incentivize me to turn. The club's not going to be getting too close to me. So then I can turn through. Again, very feel versus real. We're feeling this to get here. So let's get straight into the drills and feels I did with my student here. But before we dive into that, lag. As we said, this whole problem with my student was created because of a misconception of how lag is created. So this is so important. So lag is not created via trying to viciously pull those hands and arms down, create a big angle. Yes, we may see tour players create a really big whip and a little bit of an angle in the downswing. They're not trying to do that. It's happening via where they are at the top of the backswing and how they're moving in transition. So all those players that lag the club brilliantly are up here. They've got nice width. They're not really close with the club to their body. They've got nice width at the top. There's a decent distance there. So we don't want to get too, again, radial coming down there. At that top of that backswing, the club's going to get too close. So we don't want to get ourselves too hinged at that point. But if we've got that nice space there, it's giving us room to be able to create lag as well for that shaft to start to whip and start to load. But more importantly, the transition is the real key here. So number one, I want you to feel nice and loose with those arms to create natural lag. And then from there, I want lower body and mid-torso to turn, to rotate. Upper body and arms to stay where they are. So that change in direction of the lower body going one way, the arms and upper body staying where they are, it's going to create a lot of torque, a lot of tension on that shaft there as you start to come down. So that's a really, really good way to naturally create lag. You don't do it via manipulating it. You let it happen via good top of the backswing position, turning lower body, mid-torso, leaving the arms and chest where they are. That's going to create lag, not via trying to do something with your wrists. So let's say if you are in that state my student is, this is how we got out of it. So number one is doing some small drills here. So what we've done, I've still got my hack motion on, and this is what I'm going to do for this. This would be lovely if we use the hack motion with my student. I believe he has actually got one now. But what we want to do is create a little bit of a feedback loop here. So if we can get ourselves, like I have here, I've got a benchmark set of it showing whether I'm green or red. Green's good, that's where I would want to be. I wouldn't even mind being a little bit red of too much, let's say, ulnar deviation, so we're not railing it, hinging it up as we're coming in the downswing. So I want to be more hinged down. That's where we see all the top players in the world at impact. They actually are hinging slightly down. They've got this little angle here. They're not here, fully radial, fully hinged up with the wrists at impact. They're up here. Hands are always for players a little bit higher impact than they are at address. They're here at address, impact, they're here. Hands are always that little bit higher. That's radial deviation, hinging down, which is what we want. So, okay, let me do a little half swing. We did what we call a 9 to 3 drill. So we get from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock start off with. We wanted to stay wide, not really create really much radial deviation or hinging up at all, just to extreme it. Let's have a look there. So, absolutely, we could see too much ulnar at the top, which that's going to be with this drill because we're not creating any radial. And then absolutely at impact, we're going to get into a much better impact position. So I'm in a much more ulnar deviated place. Minus is more ulnar deviation, plus is more radial deviation. So that's where we want to be. We want to be more in the ulnar, the down. So again, this is great for exaggeration. I'm creating none in the backswing. There we go. See how the body has to stay very upright to do so. Way more so than it would functionally be able to do in the swing. But again, how are we there? Impact was good. Not quite, still green, or still yellow, sorry. But absolutely, again, in the red at the top because we're not creating any in the backswing. But this is where you need to start off practicing. Because if you don't start off practicing in this way, you're not going to be able to make this change. That's why for my student, he was really lagging it in so much, trying to physically create it. It was just really hard for him to get there without starting on almost baby steps first. So then what we did, we built it up and we tried to over exaggerate here. So what I'm going to do here, I wanted him to really feel like he was doing this, hinging down, throwing like he was casting a rod, doing it really early in his downswing to get the complete opposite wrist angle. Again, we wanted to feel this, not actually do it in reality. We wanted to be in a good spot just from that feeling. You have to feel like you're moving an absolute mile to move an inch with the golf swing. So again, so we're trying to feel there. Let's have a look and see how we did. In range at top, so I'm going to be creating more normal hinge in the backswing. And absolutely, slightly on in that impact. Good. Again, let's do another one. Really trying to exaggerate it. Good again, I really did there, nicely going through impact. Brilliant. One more, I mean, I'm feeling even for myself here that I'm doing this. Sometimes I can get the club getting too close from too much hinging. Again, really makes me turn, really makes you strike the ball really solidly. Just like the student. Again, good. I would really want to try and exaggerate it even more than that if I really try and do a crazy one. Somewhat. So, okay. That's where exaggeration practice is so important. Don't shy away from it. You're not going to start doing that. If you're doing the opposite, you're not going to then, because you've done a little bit of practicing the opposite of your fault, you're not going to, go from one fault to the other. It's almost impossible unless you've been practicing it for years. So that is such a huge way of doing it. So that's where if you do some real exaggeration practice and then do some nice 9-3 drills, if you had this same problem, that's going to be absolutely great. So we don't want to be really massively over hinging those wrists. We want to make sure that we're getting a nice amount there. Again, we don't need to be exact with how much we go for. Doesn't need to be perfect. It just doesn't, you don't want to be seeing yourself on camera getting that club ultra close to you, which is why we're not even saying you need to be this exact amount of radial deviation. You don't need to be that in depth with it. You just don't want to be physically trying to create lag. Because I like to see as a good practice, players getting into a great spot at the top and then, yes, naturally creating it. If you need to employ a feel like this, go for it. But I just wanted to make this video to show you guys that you don't have to try and do everything perfect. And for your own golf swing, you might have to choose something that feels very opposite, and don't be afraid to do that. So it's a good one. Don't try to physically create that lag, try to get it naturally. And if you've got something funky going on like my student had, it's a great one to do something feeling funky to fix it. So if you enjoyed this video, click that like button if you want more golf instruction, just like this. Hit the subscribe button and hit that bell button too to be notified every time I put out a video.